Stardust, Chapter 24, Part 2. 10:30 a.m., May 6, 2015. Medical. After checking in with the doctors, Matt stepped into the recovery wing as quietly as he could. Aside from the chorus of beeps and other noises from the medical machines, the room was completely silent. A half-dozen occupants filled beds that lined the walls, while doctors occasionally checked in before heading back out of the room. Matt walked past the rows of beds before finally stopping at the last one in the row and dragging his eyes up to get a good look at its occupant. Lana slept soundly, and the strain of her last week's ordeal was plain on her ever-sleeping face. Her skin was almost devoid of any color, and her hair was spread messily around the pillow behind her like a ragged black cloud. The most dramatic feature, though, was the blank space where her left arm should have been, and the bandaged stump just below her shoulder. As much as Matt tried, he couldn't tear his eyes away from the sight, and he subconsciously clenched and unclenched his left hand as though to reassure himself that it was still there. For nearly a minute, Matt stood there watching Lana's sleeping form before he quietly turned to leave. He didn't get more than 5 steps before a weak voice halted him in its place.
"Oh, hey, it's about time you showed up."
Realizing his quiet escape was no longer possible, Matt turned back to Lana's bed and took a seat in one of the chairs beside it. "Paul mentioned that you were well enough to take some visitors today. I heard that you were recovering well enough considering your injury."
"It hurts like a bitch, even though it's not even there. The doctors tell me that's normal, though,"
Lana explained with a wince.
"They are pretty good, though. They tell me I might be up and about within another couple of days with physical therapy. But I don't know what the recovery time for this kind of thing would be in a normal hospital, but it sounds rather fast, don't you think?"
"I'm inclined to agree with you. Have they told about where you'll be going once you've recovered?" Matt asked, leaning forward with a sympathetic look. His elbows fell to his knees as he clasped his hands and rested his chin on his thumbs. Lana managed a weak smile and abbreviated shrug followed by another wince.
"Well, nothing concrete yet. I asked if I could stay on to help with Stardust and anything else I could help with, and they said that they would get back to me. It's a better answer than telling me no right off the bat."
"I suppose so. Both Paul and I missed having you around to get the new folks adjusted to life here. If they find a way to keep you around the base, then I hope you don't mind getting in touch with Paul to see how you can lend it." And just then, Matt realized exactly what he was going to say, and judging from Lana's smirk, she did too. "Hand.
"If you need any help with the hand jobs for the newbies, I'll do everything I can to pitch in."
Matt closed his eyes and brought up his hands to cover his face, but that couldn't save him from what was coming.
"Heck, I've even got some good hand-me-down kits some of the kids could use, assuming they don't get that second hand."
Matt had to resist the impulse to groan.
"You tell Paul just to say the word and I'm his right-hand woman. You have a firm hand when dealing with the new folks, or they'll learn that they can just walk right over you."
"I was going to apologize for my comment, but then I remembered, you're a horrible person," Matt muttered, and he could hear a grin enter Lana's voice.
"You come in here with all of your backhanded comments, and you accuse me of being a horrible person? Need I remind you that I already owe you an ass-kicking, and I can do it with one arm tied behind my back. And besides, Oh, I got nothing else."
"You spent the last few days thinking of all those terrible jokes, didn't you?" Lana's response was a ghost of her usual grin.
"Oh, no, just the last few hours."
"Glad to hear that you haven't changed," Matt finally admitted with a chuckle, and they both shared that. The good mood at the moment didn't last, though. Lana's voice dropped somewhat as she asked,
"Have you seen her yet? Since the mission, I mean."
"No, I haven't," Matt said as he assumed his hands clasped pose with his elbows on his knees. "Paul's tapped me for second in command with Strike 1. With that responsibility combined with the preparation for the fresh recruits, I simply hadn't had any time to—"
"You're avoiding her."
"Yeah, that's right." The guilty admission came after a long moment of silence, and Matt had to let out a frustrated sigh before he continued. I have no earthly idea on how I'm supposed to handle this situation. I think I'd sooner take on a chrysalid with a knife than try to disarm the cluster that had just been waiting to blow up in the lab. One of the rookies claims that he did that, by the way. Took on a chrysalid with a knife, I mean.
"You're shitting me."
The animated response was tempered by another wince.
"Next thing you're gonna tell me is that he did it while wearing nothing above the belt except a mustache and a cowboy hat. Wait, don't change the subject."
"I was serious earlier. I I have no idea what I'm supposed to do to fix this. Matt started to shout, but quickly stopped as soon as he saw the dirty looks the doctors were leveling at him. How am I exactly supposed to dissuade her from her assumptions about me in such a way that doesn't have her destroying the base in the process as part of a tantrum?
And why are you asking me this?
Lana asked doubtfully, and it was her turn to sigh as she caught the glare Matt fixed with her.
Well, I see 3 options that you could attempt. The first would be the best, and the second would be risky in the long term, and third would be most risky in the short term.
And what are those options exactly?
Well, the first option is that you just play along until she goes back home, or we're all dead.
Lana explained glibly, but her good cheer withered as Matt's glare rematerialized.
The second option would be to find some excuse to never go back to Stardust and hope that she doesn't tear the base apart to find out why she had just not seen you. And the third option would be to come clean and risk whatever reaction she has to the news.
I wasn't kidding earlier. I think the knife and the chrysalid scenario is much more desirable than this mess.
What's the worst she could do, besides the whole reduce you to a fine red mist thing if she's upset?
Matt's first response was a groan. You're not helping, and I don't even know how to approach the subject. He turned back to Lana and gave her an evil smile. I should just wheel your ass into Stardust and have you explain it to her. I'm pretty sure she'll be less likely to react violently if the person explaining is already wounded. And if she does, well, justice is served.
My, what an underhanded scheme you've concocted.
Don't start with that again, Matt ordered quickly before dropping his chin into his hands. I haven't had much experience with this particular issue. I tend to be the one receiving ends of the breakups, and they rarely seem to work out well.
The term breakup implies that you're already a couple.
Lana observed slyly, but she quickly backpedaled when Matt stood and grabbed the handrails at the foot of her bed.
Okay, fine. Honesty is your best policy, or even a creative white lie if you keep it simple.
Jenkins, a creative white lie was what got us into this mess in the first place.
Technically, no. What I did was not tell the whole truth, but that's just splitting hairs at this point. I don't know, tell her that the job comes first or something, or you have an arranged marriage and it would never work out. Hey, don't give me that look, I'm trying to help here.
Lana again tried to shrug and winced in the effort.
I really don't know what to do.
I don't want to hurt her. I still remember my sister's letters when she got rejected by the first boy that she liked. She was devastated for months afterwards, plus I had to track down the little bastard and give him a harsh talking to about his behavior.
And now you're worried about her brother doing the same to you? Not to mention the fact that she's family to royalty, you know, personal student to her god and what have you.
Matt's groan was muffled as he dropped his face into his hands again. You're really not helping.
I get what you mean, I really do. She's got that little spark that tells her that everything can go right in the world with just enough hard work and determination, and she's certain that everything will turn out right in the end. She's terribly naive, but you don't want to be the one to take that little bit of hope that she has from her.
After Matt's silent nod, Lana closed her eyes and let out a sigh.
Alright, if you don't think that you can do it, then I will as soon as I can. Just try not to freak out too much when you go see her, alright? And I mean when you see her, not if. I want you to stop by to say hello right after you leave here.
Alright. What should I tell her about you? Matt asked, and a genuine note of concern entered his voice.
Tell her the truth,
Lana replied quickly.
I got banged up during a mission, but don't say a word about how, though. Better she thinks that I did something dumb than it was a mistake of hers. She strikes me as the kind of person who would let any kind of failure haunt her.
Matt again cast a wary eye over the extent of Lana's injuries. And when she finds out that you're a little more than just banged up?
I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. Now, go! She's been waiting long enough.
With that, Lana waved her remaining hand towards the door to shoo Matt away. As he exited medical, Matt caught sight of a familiar but unwelcome sight. Jack Finch leaning against the corridor while opposite at the entrance to medical, with his arms crossed and his head down in thought. Before he could simply turn and leave the newcomer to whatever he was doing, the Englishman brought up his head and raised one hand in greeting. Sergeant Harris. I hope I can get a word in, Jack said as he fell into step behind Matt. I'm a busy man, Mr. Finch. I heard that there's an innocent little girl down on the 3rd floor and she isn't gonna shoot herself in the heart. Now, is she? Matt said flatly as he marched down the corridor towards the main elevator. Yes, about that. I'm afraid I have a tendency to run off at the mouth if I'm not careful. Just ask Clara. I'd just talk and... Jack started to ramble before Matt interrupted. You've gone over your one-word limit, Mr. Finch, Matt stated in the same flat tone as they reached the elevator and started to descend. He could see the Englishman sigh quietly with a running hand through his hair, an emotion that seemed habitual rather than a conscious action. Sorry, alright, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It was rather thick of me to bring it up without knowing all the facts. How can I make it up to you? Jack finished his apology sincerely while looking to Matt for some reply. An uncomfortably long moment of silence passed through the elevator car as it descended. As the doors opened, Matt turned to Jack and quickly spoke. I'll accept your apology provisionally, but you must agree to my terms. At some point in the future, I will ask you to do something. It might not make sense at the time, and it might even be something that you would do by yourself, but when I tell you to do it, you cannot refuse. Understood? Good. But what... Jack started to say, but then he was cut off as Matt stepped back, and the elevator doors separated the two. I don't know if I'll ever call him on that request, but it might be good to let him live in fear for a bit, Matt thought to himself before turning away from the elevator to head into the Stardust Labs. 11:27 a.m. May 6, 2015. Stardust Lab. The door to Twilight's habitat hissed open to reveal the unicorn and Dr. Valen scouring what appeared to be a series of magnified schematics and circuits. Both were in a very animated conversation while pointing at various pictures until they caught sight of the soldier's entrance. When did that happen? Matt wondered as his eyes jumped from Twilight to Valen. Last I heard, Valen wasn't nearly this enthusiastic.
Ah, Sergeant, Twilight was just asking about you.
Valen said as she looked up, and Matt couldn't help but notice Twilight's ensuing glare that the good doctor was oblivious to.
We were just about to take a break.
Good timing on my part, I suppose, Matt answered as he tried to muster up a smile.
Indeed,
Valen agreed before turning back to Twilight.
I'll be sending our findings down to Shen for review, and we'll see if we can get a working prototype going in the next few days, yes? We may need you to assist once construction is complete. I'll be ready to help when it's done.
Twilight replied with a smile and a nod, which Valen returned. Valen's behavior took several moments to fully process in Matt's mind, and he had to resist the unconscious impulse to jaw drop as she turned to leave. When did this happen? Before Matt could recover, Valen had already passed him and exited the habitat, which left him alone with Twilight. So, Twilight, Matt started, but he stopped mid-sentence when he saw the annoyed glare that she was leveling at him.
Where were you both? Both of you and Lana appeared, then disappeared after asking for Wallflower, then I don't see either of you for days, and everyone's avoiding the subject when I ask about where you two were. I was worried sick.
Twilight fumed.
Everyone's always got this weird expression when I ask too. I know they're hiding something from me. Why didn't you come see me the moment you got back?
Matt had to resist temptation to take a step back from the force of the rant. Things were busy, and I couldn't find the time to...
Couldn't find the time? You couldn't find 5 minutes to stop by and say, "Hello, Twilight, I'm fine. And where's Elena? I haven't seen her either."
Twilight's rant hadn't quite escalated into shouting, but it was almost there. Lana got hurt, Twilight. She's been in medical since we got back. She got hurt in a real bad way, Matt said quietly as he walked over to one of the chairs at Twilight's table. A lot of people got hurt. I'm sorry for not coming by sooner, but with so many injured, any healthy bodies were needed to help with what they couldn't. Twilight's righteous indignation deflated into concern and guilt as she listened to Matt's explanation.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. It's just...
Her remorseful tone switched to near panic in the span of a single word.
Lana got hurt? How? Wallflower should have kept anything from seeing her. Did the spell fail?
The last question did not need to be asked.
Is this my fault?
I don't know the details, I'm afraid. Matt lied as he looked to the side, but quickly recovered. I did just come back from medical, and Lana said that it was her fault that she got hurt. Wallflower worked as well as we had expected while we were out there, and as soon as you can see her, you can ask her yourself. Twilight opened and closed her mouth before simply settling on a wordless nod. A long and increasingly awkward silence began to stretch out between the two before Matt broke into silence. What were you and Dr. Valen working on?
Teleporters, I think,
Twilight said before motioning towards the pile of pictures with one hoof.
The pictures here are the inner workings of a device that would work like a teleporter, from what she described. The Illyrium circuitry isn't complete though, as there were a few variables missing like the location and distance, but Valen got really excited and said something about computers providing target information, or something.
Oh, I see. Matt nodded. She's probably found some way to weaponize it. She did say that she was sending something down to Shen. So she's been a little nicer lately? When did that happen?
Well, we had a talk and we came to an understanding a while ago.
Twilight said cryptically before continuing.
But we've got our differences worked out. I think she's more enthusiastic because of the Illyrium testing, and I'm just happy that I can do more to help.
What exactly are you doing with the Illyrium? Matt asked with an arched eyebrow.
Well, apparently we can use it to reproduce certain spell effects,
Twilight said, and she took a deep breath that Matt was becoming increasingly familiar with.
Illyrium has the capacity to draw, channel, or store energy from the field, much like that I can with my horn, and it's manipulated in very specific ways, and it can create replicas of some of the spells that I can do. I've already helped Moira build a little box that helps her detect my magic, and I've also helped make blueprints so that we can try to artificially reproduce the Wallflower spell with a similar device.
And how did that go? Matt asked while he controlled his growing interest in the subject. Artificially reproducing Wallflower? If they can do that and find some way to...
They lost the prototype.
They lost... Matt's train of thought was interrupted as he comprehended Twilight's statement, and he turned aghast to look towards the unicorn to find a barely suppressed smirk. Matt couldn't help but chuckle, and Twilight ceased to hide her own humor. Oh, that's pretty funny. Lana's rubbing on you, I think. Don't tell Lena about your little development, though. She's a terrible prankster, and I'd hate to give her the ability to perpetrate her pranks while being virtually invisible. As the subject of Lena entered the conversation, the awkward silence returned. Damn it, man. It's now or never. You charge into gunfire and abominations from beyond the sky for a living. An uncomfortable conversation is nothing compared to that. Matt chatted to himself to rally his willpower. Except if you handle it wrong and she'll turn you into a hamburger, a dark voice muttered in the back of his mind, and he took a split second to imagine the owner of that voice getting strangled. Twilight, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. The last few times that Lana's been here, she's been teasing you about something, and I think we need to talk about... Matt started tentatively, but was cut off mid-sentence.
It's too soon!
What's...
I'm sorry, but it's just too soon for me. I know, I'm a bit of a late bloomer, and I'll be the first to admit I mostly avoid things like relationships. After all, it wasn't too long ago that I didn't even have any real friends. Plus, Mom always keeps sending me these books, and Cadence keeps asking me if I found my special sun pony, but I've always had so much work to do, and stuff like that can wait until later. I think you're an amazing human, Matt, but I'm just not ready for a relationship right now with all this stress that's going on, and I really value our friendship, so I hope that we can stay friends for now. That might change in the future, but I just need time to think about...
Twilight blurted out with a flood of words, but eventually ran out of breath and had to stop to take in a large gasp of air and look fearfully at Matt. Well, that's exactly what I was thinking about, Twilight, Matt said slowly. We all need time to consider the future and what's going on right now in the world. It might be best to put such pursuits off now, right?
I'm so glad that you agree.
Twilight finally let out her held breath with a relief.
Can we stay friends, though? At least for now?
That's perfectly fine, Twilight, the soldier agreed as he stood to leave. I'm afraid I have to go now, Twilight. I wasn't exaggerating when I said that there's a lot of work to do with so many people gone.
I understand, and thank you for understanding.
Matt stepped out of the habitat to find Shen and Mills loitering under the recently patched roof in the center of the Stardust testing area, while Valen was nowhere to be seen. Well, how did it go? Shen asked gently. Matt finally let out a breath that he has been holding as he finally answered. I think I've been friend-zoned. All three men briefly chuckled and turned to leave the lab, and Matt tried not to think about why those words bothered him so much.